welcome, welcome, Colton.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah. Okay, now let's delve into the captivating story behind Prime's inception. What inspired its creation? Was it a profound understanding of the industry or a pivotal moment that ignited a desire to break new ground?
Well, Prime's inception was really because it was something that I wanted to use. I was a really big DeFi user myself. I got really into it during DeFi summer in the following year, and I was doing a ton of strategies that involved different kinds of leverage on my portfolio. And I think the insight was I come from a traditional finance background where when you want to get portfolio margin or you want to borrow against your assets, you borrow against all of them at once. You're borrowing against, you've got all of your assets summed up and then all of your liabilities summed up. And that's how it works if you go to a traditional prime brokerage. In crypto, I was managing different positions on different chains. I had different liquidation thresholds. There was no real easy way to bridge those positions to easily rebalance them. And it was a total headache. And I felt like it was really limiting what I was able to do as a DeFi user. And I was pretty sure that other DeFi power users were experiencing the same thing. And so that was the genesis for the idea behind Prime was I wanted an application that I could use where I could deposit all of my tokens into a single protocol, regardless of what blockchain it was on, and be able to receive margin wherever I needed it, and be able to use that and then repay it whenever it was convenient for me. And so the insight behind Prime Protocol was basically trying to bring DeFi closer to TradFi in terms of feature parity. So trying to make crypto more usable, more user-friendly, both for beginning and advanced users, and increase the financial utility of all of these different leverage strategies that people might want to engage in.
Okay, so are you do you have a technical background? Because I hated DeFi before, but I never get a chance to create it all by myself.
Yeah, I mean, I've been coding since I was in middle school. So I have technical background. In college, I did statistics and data science and economics, which was a double major. The stats and data science major was focused on, it was like half coding classes, half math and statistics and machine learning classes. So I really got a good understanding of all of the financial concepts, but also all of the computer science concepts, because I took all of the core comp sci classes as well. Although I'll say in terms of building in DeFi, nobody teaches you that in school. That's really something you just learn on your own out of interest. And that's, I think, how most programmers get started anyways, is just poking around on the internet and building small projects and building up to bigger ones.
Oh, that's great. Okay, with the stage set, let's unravel the intricate tapestry of Prime's technology architecture and innovative solutions. So how does it seamlessly bridge the gap between different ecosystems and fostering a harmonious convergence of technologies?
So what Prime does, which applications haven't done before, is it uses generic message passing to send packets of arbitrary data between chains. And so right now, all of those messages are going over a protocol called Axelar, which is one of the most decentralized generic message passers out there. It's extremely secure. And the way it works is, let's say you're sending a message from chain A to chain B. On chain A, as a part of the transaction, you're going to send up certain events. Those events are going to be recognized by the Axelar blockchain. The Axelar blockchain is going to come to consensus and create basically a signature on that message, affirming that those messages were intended to be sent. And then there's a relayer which delivers those signed messages to chain B. And what this allows for you to do is basically have a cryptographic guarantee that something that happened on chain B can be observed from chain A or vice versa. And so what this allows us to do is, let's say you want to deposit tokens on Ethereum, but you want to borrow on Avalanche. We can have those chains communicate with each other and basically say, okay, I see that you have your deposit on Ethereum, so I'm going to take out a borrow on Avalanche. And what we do in order to minimize the cost and latency and maximize the interoperability of the protocol is we use Polkadot and Moonbeam as our master chain. So anytime you deposit or repay, there's a message going from Ethereum or Avalanche or Arbitrum to Moonbeam, being recorded on Moonbeam. And then whenever you need to do something that requires a liquidity check, there's basically what we call a round trip transaction where there's a message basically initiating the request. There's a liquidity check that's run on Polkadot. And then there's a fallback message that's sent to distribute the tokens on the network that you requested them to be distributed on. And so that way, anytime we add a new chain into the system, you don't have to pay the super high gas fees of ETH. You don't have to wait for the latency of chains with really long finality. You get the low cost and fast finality of Polkadot, no matter where you are, passing layer.
Okay, get it. But let's not stop there. Let's witness Prime in action. So could you give us a quick demonstration of the dApp?
Sure. There we go. So here's a branch of the app that is current with the latest deployment. And this is a fresh wallet that hasn't used the app before, touched any of the old markets. So we've got no deposits. And I think what I'll do here is I'll demonstrate how I can start out on Moonbeam. I'm going to deposit 50% of my Glimmer tokens into the protocol.
Yeah.
And this is pretty, typical behavior of a dApp. But what's cool is once this is deposited, I can decide, you know what, I want to go to Arbitrum and I want to receive ETH and start doing activities on Arbitrum. So what I can do is I can actually request that borrow directly from Moonbeam. I could also request it from Arbitrum, but this wallet only has Glimmer tokens in it. So I'm going to get started by requesting a borrow on Arbitrum. And I can pay the gas with Moonbeam. So let's take 50% of my available borrow. This is going to be worth $4. And I'm going to pay the gas on Moonbeam here. All right, so now you can see that my deposit has been reflected that I did on Moonbeam. I've deposited 75 Glimmer. And now what we're going to see is we're going to see some Ethereum pop out on Arbitrum, despite the fact that I currently have no assets on Arbitrum. Yeah. So this account right here, if I switch it over to Arbitrum,
zero.
I've got 0. But because I'm using Prime, I can use different chains to request borrows, and those borrows are sent to me on whichever chain I requested them on. And because Moonbeam is the hub, it's always going to be the fastest and cheapest to pay gas on Moonbeam in order to receive collateral or a borrow or a withdraw on a different chain. And you can track the status of your transaction by taking a look at Axelar. We can see right now it's getting confirmed on the Axelar blockchain. And so this should be sent in just a second. But that's the basic idea behind the application. I'll also take out a borrow on Moonbeam just to show you how I can have multiple borrows from the same account. So let's choose something that's on the Moonbeam blockchain, and I'll borrow some USDC. And I'll borrow, let's just say I want to borrow $1. So the app switches me back over to Moonbeam. Confirm that transaction. And this one will go a little bit faster because we don't have to use Axelar to do a borrow to Moonbeam. And once that updates, we'll see our total borrows update, and we'll see that we're going to start having some borrowed balances here. And then the cool thing is, let's say I didn't have money to start out on Moonbeam. Looks like our Arbitrum transaction just went through. I'll just show you guys how now on Arbitrum, I have 0.026 ETH. It's $4.74. And then I have $1 more of borrows here because the Moonbeam transaction was successful. And you can see now available in my wallet, I have a 1 USDC on Moonbeam, and I have money in ETH on Arbitrum as well. And let's say I was starting out on a completely different chain like Avalanche. Well, I could start on Avalanche by depositing my tokens there. And then I could request my borrow on Moonbeam. And this could act as a bridge into the Moonbeam ecosystem as well. I can deposit on any of these blockchains that are supported. We're going to add new ones really soon. We're also about to announce new chains as well, new chains and new assets. So there's going to be a lot of really cool functionality here where you're going to be able to leverage your entire portfolio all from one place and one dashboard.
Yeah, that's amazing. So, is there any protocols that I think they're acting like the same role, acting as a hub, but the different, prime set apart with them is the way that, how to kind of, bridging is not the right word, but so it's all about prime. What set prime apart is all about the the tech behind it.
Yeah,
Right.
it's all about the interoperability. So there's no other protocol where you can seamlessly use multiple different chains, and where I can have a portfolio that is across where I just have tokens on one chain, but I borrowed on two different chains. That's pretty unheard of. Nobody's accomplished this yet because it is a pretty big technical challenge in order to get all of this to work behind the scenes.
Wow. Yes, that's amazing.
Yeah. So yeah, that's the app. I would definitely encourage everybody watching to go and check it out. There's a lot of cool strategies that this enables, because before, let's say you had tokens on chain A and you wanted to do something on chain B, you had to pay all of this slippage, you had to find a bridge to go over, you had to swap in and out of tokens in order to get over there. Whereas with Prime, there's no upfront fee to move your capital from one chain to another. So it really unlocks just a whole new level of capital efficiency within DeFi and makes it really easy for you to yield farm on different chains without having to have assets there to start out.
Yes. And as we navigate the DeFi landscape, let's explore the remarkable synergies that can be forged between Prime and other prominent protocols. How can these collaborations unlock and tap the potentials and pave the way for the unprecedented growth?
Yeah, so there are a bunch of different ways. One is that we're seeing a lot of people do is interest rate arbitrage. So let's say you've got USDC or you've got ETH and you want to keep that price exposure, but you want to earn increased yield. Well, you can find a protocol on a completely different chain that has higher yields than Prime. Like right now, you can get really good rates on Moonwell, lending out your assets. That's pretty much any asset that's on Prime. You can borrow at a lower rate from us and then lend out over there and keep holding on to your original assets that you had on like Avalanche or Ethereum or Arbitrum. And you're increasing your effective yield 5, 7, 8% without taking very much risk at all. There's also, I think, a really natural synergy between any yield farm that a DEX has and what we've built. Because a lot of these yield farms, you don't know how long the high yields are going to stay high. And you also don't always want to hold the underlying tokens. So let's say you've got a farm that's like Bitcoin and Avalanche. Those are two tokens that are going to be supported really soon on Prime. And there are some awesome yields. If you go to Trader Joe, you can make 100% APY by being an LP in that pool. But maybe you just want to keep most of your assets on Polkadot and you have a lot of XC dot that you don't want to sell. Well, you could collateralize that on Moonbeam. You could borrow the Bitcoin, borrow the Avalanche tokens, and then you could supply into that liquidity pool and earn really great yield without even taking the price exposure, or at least the first order price exposure, because you've borrowed all of those assets. And then you repay them when you're done, and you're left with a ton of extra yield that you earned in the process. And so I think there's a lot of these like cross-chain yield farming activities that Prime is going to make possible that just weren't feasible before. And so I really think it's going to make the whole DeFi landscape a lot more capital efficient. And as people start using us more, it's also going to bring different interest rates between different ecosystems into parity, because otherwise there's going to be an arbitrage opportunity where you can have assets in one place, but be leveraging them somewhere else in order to get a better yield.
Yeah, I think you are really, solving these problems from the user's perspective. You know
Yeah,
what?
yeah. Well,
Yeah, you know what users are thinking about.
well, it's because I am a user. I think that's one of the most important things is, so if you're solving a problem that you don't have,
Mhm.
then like you have no idea whether it's actually a problem or not. So I think it's really important that you're solving something that you've had an issue with before.
Yeah, I can't agree more. And with each passing day, the DeFi industry continues to make wave. But how much more untapped potential lies on the horizon, do you think?
I mean, I think we're really just getting started. Everybody who's like, watching this right now is incredibly early. There's, DeFi has faced a lot of headwinds over the past year and a half. It's faced regulatory headwinds. It's faced like total market collapse, and it's still going. And I think we've proven that this technology is so resilient and can make it through different market cycles that it's only going to come back stronger and more battle tested. And so, I think there's a lot of opportunity for DeFi to not just be like a gambling casino, but to actually really serve as the rails for a lot of, what was traditionally considered, TradFi. Decentralizing a lot of this centralized financial infrastructure, I think will have a lot of benefits for society. And you can already see there's institutional capital that's not just waiting on the sidelines, it's starting to deploy into crypto through different kinds of real world assets. And the tools that we're building now, the financial tools that we're doing in a decentralized way, are going to be the infrastructure that allows these larger players to start taking advantage of this technology and all of the benefits that transparency, faster finality brings, and security brings to the financial landscape.
Okay, but as we envision the future, one question looms large. That is, will DeFi ultimately overthrow traditional centralized finance? Or,
I think, yeah, I think there are definitely areas where it will, and there are some areas where it doesn't make sense. Areas where I think it will, a lot of like different kinds of trading of liquid assets, I think DeFi is much better equipped to handle than a lot of these legacy financial institutions. Right now, you have T+2 settlement for stocks, which is kind of crazy that it takes that long still in like the internet age for us to settle a stock transaction. A lot of bond transactions are even longer. There's so I think there's really a lot of benefits that blockchain can bring to traditional finance. There's also been a lot of issues with things like lack of basically that come from a lack of transparency. There have been scandals around like LIBOR and trying to figure out what the overnight rate between banks is, because people are literally, they up until very recently were just filling out surveys to come up with these kinds of short rates. Now we have all of this data on chain. We can really easily determine like what an average composite short rate index should be, and we can derive it from blockchain. And as we onboard new financial institutions onto blockchain, I think things like LIBOR and SOFR are going to be a lot easier to calculate. And then the last thing I would say is there's a lot of potential to basically make traditional finance functions more accessible to the retail investor or the everyday user. Obviously, this is pending like regulations, but I think especially internationally, there are a lot of people who just don't have access to finance. And that's because it's a very closed system and it's designed to keep the people at the top at the top. And what DeFi does is it opens it up to everybody. That's the whole point of it being permissionless. And I think it's going to really make things a lot better for people outside of the major financial hubs, because everybody's going to have access to trading, to different kinds of financial tooling that traditionally only big hedge funds had. So I definitely think there's a lot of room for DeFi to make traditional finance more efficient and also expand access to more people who didn't have access before. And by virtue of doing that, you're going to bring more money into the system and you're going to make it even more efficient and stronger than it was before.
Okay, so what do you think now, at this stage, what the barriers of centralized financial users enter into the DeFi DeFi industry right now?
Yeah, so I think for traditional centralized larger institutions, at least the ones that are based in the West, and I guess to some extent in the East too, it's regulation. And I don't actually think that it's a hopeless cause. I think there are a lot of promising developments that are happening, and some of it is dependent on politics, but I do think that a lot of it is also driven just by the fact that right now the people who are in charge tend to be pretty old, and I think younger people are embracing this kind of innovation, and as they become more well represented in governments around the world, people are going to want to embrace this change because they really see the value in it. So I do think that it will get better. And once there's sort of the green light from regulators, I think centralized institutions are going to pile in.
Lastly, let's forward to the future and embark on Prime's exciting journey ahead. So could you share Prime's comprehensive development roadmap and milestone objectives? And what are the Prime's areas of focus for the upcoming year? And what are your expectations and aspirations for the future trajectory of the primary project?
Sure. So basically, our objective for the next year is we want to be expanding to as many different chains and assets as possible, and we also want to take as many useful kinds of collateral as possible. I think what we started out with were some very basic, stable coins and network tokens, and a few extra ERC20 tokens. We verified that everything is working smoothly, and now we're basically going to shift into growth phase. And so we have some liquidity incentives to deploy. We've got a ton of new assets and chains on the roadmap that I think are going to really supercharge the growth of the protocol. And then we're going to add some other functionality to the app to try and make the UX even better, to highlight different kinds of strategies for people so they can really see how Prime can make them money on assets that they just have idle in their portfolio that they didn't even know they could be making extra money on. And we're going to be doing a ton of partnerships with other protocols to really emphasize how impactful the composability between Prime and other protocols can be. So I would say next year, expect us to be on many more chains with many more assets. I would expect within the next month, we're going to have added a handful of new assets on multiple chains, and there will be at least one, maybe even two more blockchains added to the protocol. So we're going to be starting to pick up the pace and move pretty quickly here to expand and grow the protocol and to grow the community. So we're really excited for all of that.
Yeah, you mentioned a partnership. Is there someone very important that need to be highlighted?
Well, we've already publicly announced that we're collaborating with StellaSwap. There are some awesome opportunities that Prime enables. So somebody from any blockchain ecosystem can start participating in the really amazing yields that you can get on StellaSwap's Pulsar farms, their stablecoin farms, and other liquidity providing activities there. We're going to announce some collaborations with DEXs on other chains as well very shortly for similar kinds of opportunities where we can help you get a super high yield by borrowing from us very cheaply and really taking care of a lot of your delta risk too, so that you don't have to have direct price exposure to these assets and LP pools. And then we've obviously got new chains on the roadmap, which we're pretty excited for and will be announced very shortly.
Yeah, great. And I think we've learned a lot about Prime protocol, and it's really amazing. And I hope that our community can love Prime's protocol and make everything about you and Prime protocol a great success. And we will reach out to you for further, cooperations in our community. Yeah. And
yeah, I would love to keep you updated. And I'm sure in a couple of months, there's going to be a lot of progress to report on.
And stay tuned. And thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me. Really great talking with you.